Can we all settle down, please? We're going to start our session. Our speaker is here. So may I just request you to settle down and have your discussions on the table or subsequently. We have a speaker for today, Mr. Daniel Mekwade. And before we start today's program, let's have a group picture first, as normal. Come. Thank you. We start off today's very interesting session on entrepreneurship, on venture for social enterprise. May I invite Vasvi Bharatram, Vice President Flow, to give the green certificate and memento to Daniel Mekwade. You know, we plant trees in your name, Daniel, rather than we give you a bouquet of flowers. Yeah, and you can actually see it.
That's terrific. Thank you. That is really good. That is awesome. Thank you.
Can I invite Ashna Garodia Gupta, President Flow, to give the memento to Latika Kohli, Day Chair and a Flow member. May I now invite Archana Garodia Gupta, President Flow, to deliver the welcome address for this very interesting session.
Good morning. It's a very hot morning, but I'm glad to see a full house. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this interesting entrepreneurship session on venture for social enterprise, designing, implementing and scaling social enterprise and CSR solutions. Social entrepreneurship in India has gained immense value in the last few years. In essence, we use business acumen and the skills of an entrepreneur and social causes to change society for the better. And success is not measured in the conventional way that you measure profit, but in terms of the number of people whose lives have been affected and changed due to your efforts. For any social enterprise to be successful, we need to understand the necessity of practical, innovative and sustainable approaches to benefit society in general. In conjunction with the Flow mission, Power to Empower, the entrepreneurship session has been organized with the aim of empowering members to contribute meaningfully to economic and social development. Professor Dan Mekwade is with us. Thank you so much for addressing our members, and we are hoping to learn a lot and use that knowledge to actually bring about change in our society. I'd like to invite the Day Chair, Ms. Latika Kohli, now to further introduce Mr. Mekwade and thank her for putting together this program. I would also like to thank Vinita Bimbet, Senior Vice President, who has flown down from Bombay for this program, and Vasvi Bharatram for helping put this together. Let us make the best of this opportunity to help us contribute to the development of our nation. Thank you.
Good morning. So many fantastic looking women in one room. Dan, you're a lucky guy.
I truly am.
So Dan Mekwade is visiting us from New York, from Columbia University. I met Dan first in January of 2014. And, no, I'm sorry, 2013.
Yep.
And I cannot tell you how my attitude to life has changed after I met Dan. and I've heard this statement not only from me telling myself, but he's taught a lot of amazing kids in high school. He's taught a lot of college students. He's taught a lot of executives. And I think I just heard this one common thread at the end of each course, talk, event, workshop, that I think I can do this. And I think once in your mind you tell yourself, I can do this, boy, you just remove all the obstacles and you're ready to rock and roll. So I welcome you to this journey with Professor Dan McQuaid from Columbia University, from going to awesome, from awesome to awesomeness. Welcome.
Thank you, Radhika.
There you go. What Dan will do is, we'll all move on that side, so you are then free to move around.
I'm going to move around. I like to move around. This is my second opportunity to speak to members of Flow. We did a 2 or 3 day session that January when I met Radhika. And I got to tell you, I received more out of it than I think the women that took the session. It was a great experience. The women were powerful and awesome, and I totally want to do it again. I just, I had more fun doing it and explaining how you can empower a woman today. Now that's pretty interesting considering I'm one of 5 boys in my family, and my sister is number 6, and she came along when I was little. But there were 2 very, very, very powerful women in my life. And that was my mom, she was about that big, but my grandmother, who came into the United States from Ireland. And she was a woman that had an incredible power. She also had a physical disability. She couldn't hear. So, yeah, she was mostly deaf. Most of her life, she was mostly deaf until she was in her 60s, and she had an operation to get her hearing back. Imagine that happening at that stage in your life. So when I came in the house and I closed the door, she started yelling at me, "Don't slam the door." So, but Nana was an incredible, powerful woman. She, again, this is a woman that was born in the 1900s, 1896. But every day that I went into her, in her very soft voice, and she, in a dress that I never ever saw her in slacks. She was also professional. Also a woman that did not have an education and did not have money. But she taught me from a young age that I could do anything. Anything. And I used to sit and just listen to her. And before she died, I said, "Nana, you've got to tell me more of the story of your life." And she started to open up of stories I never heard. And I went and got a piece of paper and a pencil, and I started writing it down. And to understand the struggles that she went through as a woman coming from a foreign land into a country where it was very difficult for her. And at that point, I just realized everything that she's done in her life is because she had the power to do it. That she had something in her, that drive, to make herself different and effective in a new land. And she used to always push me to do more. She wanted me to be a lawyer. Didn't happen. I wanted to be a teacher. So, to Nana, I got to tell you, she taught me, number one, to respect women, to empower women, in a society that, at that time really did not have women in the workplace, as well as it should. So that's where I get my energy. That's where I get my desire and my love for women, even though I grew up in a house with a bunch of boys. So that's my story of my Nana. My mom was also wonderful, but I really think the power I received, it came from my grandmother. So today we're going to talk about social enterprise. What is it? What's changing in it? Because this is changing rapidly across the world, not just in the United States. And I want to give you a little bit background about myself. Radhika, talk to you about the courses I teach. But in my career, I've been fortunate to own 3 companies that I've started from scratch as an entrepreneur. But also during that time period, I was involved in a number of nonprofits and CSR. One of the ones that I worked on is the Good Neighbor program in New York City. I ran that program for 7 years for a company, and we were involved in education and health and welfare in New York City to the inner city. The organization was a CSR program, company, operation. That means we were not a nonprofit, we were not a social enterprise, but we were an umbrella. I'll explain a little bit about that shortly. I also opened up an art museum in New Bedford, Massachusetts, where I grew up. I know very little about art. I cannot draw a stick man. I was the vice president and I got that place opened. Why did I do it? The reason is, at the time I was living in that area, I have 2 older sons. At the time were probably 10, 11, 12, whatever it was, and my fear was that they were going to go to school and leave the area because there was no job opportunities in that market. And I felt that culture is a very important part of business. That if we're going to get companies to relocate to this area and we're going to bring talented employees from another part of the country, what's in it for them? Culture plays a big role in attracting talent to businesses that could relocate there. So I convinced the mayor of the city to give me a building for nothing that was an old bank. I convinced the mayor to give me $1 million to get this place built, redone, because the building basically was falling in, it was condemned. And the city at that time, New Bedford, Massachusetts, was the richest city in the world back in the 1800s. Does anyone know why? Whale oil, because of whaling, the city that lit the world. Back then, there was a lot of wealth, and wealth brings artists. It brings the social, and so we had an incredible amount of artwork that was stored in a library that nobody saw. But I said, we need to have a museum to show those beautiful pieces, but we also need to work with the community. Another opportunity that I had was starting the South Coast Learning Network. This was also a nonprofit, and what we did within the community, we had talented people, such as yourselves, living in town, and we wanted to tap into your talents to retrain adults that were displaced in their jobs. So we ran the South Coast Learning Network. We did our first session. We had, I think, 100 courses, and we had 400 people taking the courses. We used the library conference room. We used the mayor's office. We didn't have a building. We just used companies' corporate offices to teach these classes. Within 3 years, we were teaching about 3,000 students over 3 semesters per year. It was a great event in order to do. With Mike Bloomberg, the mayor of New York, with the Good Neighbor program, I started, and I'll show you in the slides, once he found out about the Good Neighbor program, he got me involved in the reducing the amount of salt in foods in the United States. So I worked with a big food distributor company, and I convinced them to support this program to reduce the amount of salt in food in New York City. I also started another program that was called Balanced Lives. Now, Balanced Lives was meant to instruct people when they're purchasing food on the shelf, that shelf tag, to tell them how many calories were in that food. Also, what were the other good attributes of that food. Mayor Bloomberg had started a program in New York, among many other health initiatives, of putting calories on everything you buy. So if you go to Starbucks in New York City, you're going to see that blueberry muffin is 340 calories. All right, you're going to see that the bagel is a lot more, like 475. So I'm into the yogurt blueberry muffin at Starbucks because it has about 325. So his initiative, he got me in touch with the Department of Health in the New York City, and we created a model that we were able to label the items in a supermarket. Now, here's a crazy number. There's like 20 to 25,000 items in a supermarket in the United States. How many items do you think were able to get a label that passed the filters that we could put the calorie counts on? 3,000. Yes. Imagine that. So that was one of the other programs we did. I'll explain some of this because I'm going to show you what the program was that I did. It was called the Good Neighbor program. It was done for a company called White Rose, and White Rose supplied about 1,200 stores in the tri-state area around New York City with food. They were the big distributor. Throughout the year, you would call us up from your charity or you from your charity asking for money or support, and we would go to our suppliers, which were all the food companies, and we kept on asking them. Well, it got out of control. So we decided to create this umbrella called the Good Neighbor Program. So the Good Neighbor Program became our CSR program. And basically what we did is we went to about 20 food companies like Colgate, Pepsi, Clorox, all of them, Smuckers, and we said, we're only going to come to you once, and I'm going to ask you for a lot of money one time. And they said, what's in it for us? I said, we're going to start these programs in New York City, and we're going to put your brand next to these programs that we're going to do. So fortunately, it worked. So these were some of the companies, Unilever, Colgate, General Mills, Smuckers. We went out and we were able to convince these base ones, and we only could handle about 20